Hello and welcome to everyone. Let's take a moment and talk about OneNote and how we're going to use it in this classroom. I like OneNote because it's a digital notes app that's integrated into the Office 365 ecosystem. So it works with the Office 365 subscription you get as a student of Jackson College. We will use the app to store digital files of class handouts, copies of digital media, and notes from the live sessions. OneNote's freely available as part of your O365 subscription, and I'd advise you download it to your computer. Program supports all platforms except Linux natively. If you happen to be on Linux, you can use the web app. All right. So let's look at how we open OneNote. In another video, we discussed how to download and load the Microsoft Teams app, a sort of Microsoft Office hub. The type of OneNote notebook we are using is called a class notebook, which allows for generally visible material and material to be pushed to specific students. The notebook is associated with the team you'll receive an invitation to join. Now, let's open the Teams app and navigate to the notebook through the app. When you open the app, you'll typically be presented with either the schedule view or the Teams view. So again, this is the Teams view in the Microsoft Teams app. I'm using the web app, but the native app will look exactly the same. And then there is the calendar view, which is the other one you could possibly see. So in the Teams view, you'll navigate to the team that you're a part of, and I'll almost always list them as this. So it'll be Chem 131, section number, term, so that I have different ones set up. When you come in, you're not going to see this stuff because this is for me. What you'll probably see is the stuff at the bottom, the announcements, the conversations. The class notebook is where you find the OneNote notebook, as we talked about in the Teams video. And then you have a couple of options, right? Um, my option is to actually open this in the desktop app. Or you can open it in the browser. Again, if you're on Linux, it's not supported natively, but you can open it in the browser, but I think the desktop app works a little snappier and a little bit better. So let's click on that. So we open the desktop app, it says, hey, can I do that? You say, sure, up it pops. Now it's gonna be like, okay, let me load all this crap in here. It takes a second for it to load the first time. The good news is, once you do this the first time with the desktop app, it will be loaded in there forever. And any changes will sync to it that I push through. So it's a little bit longer of a startup, but after that, it goes much snappier. And I think the organization looks a little bit better in the dedicated app versus doing it in the um, web app or in the Teams viewer. It really only suggests you use a Teams viewer or the web app if by chance you happen to be on Linux. Nothing against that. I have a whole partition on my drive in Linux. I use it quite frequently, but OneNote and Teams not natively supported. All right. So you're going to see a little bit different view than me, but not terribly so. So you'll notice up at the top here, the way this is set up. So this first drop down over here are a list of all your notebooks. Now, you're not going to see all these. What you'll see is a personal notebook because it'll create one by default when you load up OneNote for the first time. And you'll also see the notebook that we're in. It'll be listed exactly the same as the team. All right. Next to that, across the top row here are what we call section groups. All right. So the first page is just a welcome page. I'll probably fiddle with that a little bit more. I haven't done a lot with it right now. But you'll notice up here, you'll see collaboration space, content library, teacher only. So teacher only will be student only for you, and it'll say your name or something like that. I can't remember exactly how it states it. But I'll use that if I need to push anything specifically to you. This could be used in the case of I wanted to push, say, a modified test because of student accommodations, right? So something about your student accommodations meant you couldn't do the assessments that were online, so I might push it here so that it's easier for you to access or something. That folder is only going to be accessible by you and me, nobody else in the class. All right. Collaboration space is where I often bring up blank pages to work with students on during, say, one-on-one tutoring sessions or during a small group that gets together and wants to meet with me and work on stuff. Or you can even use it yourselves as a collaboration space between a number of students who want to get together on there. Anybody can create an instance in that, anybody can edit it. That is exactly what it sounds like, a place to work on stuff. The bulk of what we're going to be using it for is what's called the content library. Now, only I can modify the content library. All right. So when we go to the content library, we're going to have a number of sections across the top. There are three main headings in the content library: class notes, handouts, lab handouts. All right. So each of these sections leads to a number of pages. So let's start at the end and work forward. Lab handouts. So lab handouts are exactly what they sound like. These are copies of the labs. Now, some of these labs, these are, I think, more than the total number we're doing this term. Oh no, there's some copies in here I got to eliminate. So you see here at the top the lab schedule. So here you can see the lab schedule and the due dates. This is also listed in the syllabus section of the Canvas page, and it's listed in the due date section of the homepage on the team's homepage. So there's a lot of places to get the due dates for laboratory. This is just another place to kind of stick them. So in case you're, because this will load to your machine and be accessible offline the first time you pull it down. So you can look at it offline if your internet connection's a little fuzzy type setup. You'll notice again, like I said, some weeks have one lab, some weeks have two labs. It's just the way it works, right? We have to do 10 labs, 10 labs, 7 weeks. Got to have a couple of 2 lab weeks. And then the individual labs are on the side. As you can tell, there's a couple of repeats in here for some reason, so I got to go through there and eliminate the repeats. The upside to this is if you're working on the labs and your internet connection isn't that good, if you've synced this OneNote to a local copy of OneNote on your computer, you will actually have all of the data sets in there in the system, and you'll have a copy of the lab report in there. So you can work offline and then upload it when your connection gets better. So this is why I say it's a good idea to have OneNote installed on your machine and get this notebook locally synced, because it'll be very, very useful. All right. The second one, handouts. Well, handouts are exactly what they sound like. These are going to be things that are overall, given to everybody just for informational purposes. The only one I have in there right now is the syllabus, and this is just another copy of the syllabus in case you lose the document file I sent you, or sorry, PDF file I sent you. I don't know if I sent it as Docker or PDF. Either one. You can't access the online repository of it. You can't access the online version of it. Your computer connection's crapped out and you want to look up something in the syllabus. Here, you have a local copy of it now. This is an exact copy of the HTML from the page on Canvas. So everything's exactly the same. Goes all the way down, right? And also the schedule at the bottom, just like the one online does. All right. So another way to access this if you are offline, have a poor connection, or don't want to spend a lot of time online because your connection's metered in some way. I might put other things in here depending on, what I'm working on. I might put other handouts in here to help you with different things. Like I might put a one sheet in here about, hey, this is a one sheet of an example of working out a dimensional analysis problem or something like that. The big use for OneNote, other than the offline capability, The big use for OneNote are the class notes. All right. So we have 2 live sessions a week. All right. And again, like I said, you're not required to attend the live sessions, but you are required to get the information from the live sessions. Now, every live session works in the same way. You'll notice there are 2 per week. I have them all listed here. I have horrible jokes in each one of them, so you get along. And I haven't filled these out yet, but this is where I'm going to build out the live sessions. So this is where you're going to find what would be the equivalent of the information you'd see in a PowerPoint presentation, but also a lot of handwriting that I'll do during the live session. A student might ask a question and I'll, jot off to the side and I'll work out a problem real quick that specifically addresses the question they have about material. Or a student might ask, well, I don't really understand what X means. Can you elaborate on that? I'd be like, sure. And I'll expand the document out and add in some handwritten notes on that information. So this is going to be the living document of those live sessions. It's going to have the kind of perfunctory information that I'm going to add in there at the beginning that I want to cover. Plus, it's going to have in any notes from things that students brought up or, spur of the moment things that come to me. And I say, oh, well, let's think about it this way to give another way to think about things. So when you go back, you're going to see this in the recording because this is what I'll be working from in the recording. I'll actually have OneNote running and that's what I'll be working from. But this also, again, allows you an offline copy of that. So if you can't quite, get to the recording just yet, but you want to know what we covered, you can scan down through that day's document and say, oh, well, I get the basic gist of what he was covering, but I don't really get what he's doing here, so I should probably look for that part of the video, right? So that's really the power of using OneNote. Now, I use this instead of PowerPoint anymore because I found this is especially true in face-to-face classes, but also to a lesser degree in virtual classes, that students are way too passive with PowerPoint. They think everything's in the slide and I must not think, right? And that's not really a way to do this. Now, what you're going to find is I'm going to load stuff into these days before the day. Now, it might be that morning I load it in, but I'm going to load it in before we have class. So you can also look at it before class and get an idea of, oh, this is what we're going to cover, and scan through it and highlight, I don't get what he's talking about here. So when he's talking about it in class, if it doesn't make more sense than it does right here to me, I should probably ask a question. So it allows you to prepare for class. And again, anytime you have a connection to the internet, it will sync this notebook automatically. So anything I do will appear. And as long as you sync it a couple hours before class, you'll know what's going to be doing in that class. I'm not going to load everything in at the beginning. The reason I'm not going to load everything in at the beginning is not because I'm lazy. It's because sometimes things change depending on how the class is doing with particular topics. I may have to expand on something or contract on something depending on the particular vibe I'm getting from a class, right? Or the questions they're asking. So I tend to do it either the day before or the day of. I tend to finalize what I'm going to, put in there and then load the stuff up. Try to do it in the morning. The day of class is the latest I try to do it. But that's pretty much how you use OneNote. Again, highly advise you install a local copy if you are on Mac or iPad or Android or Windows. Any one of those, there is a native app for it. If you're on Linux, you got to use a web app. All right. Still it works really well as a web app, but you just have to be online to use it. All right. So that's OneNote in a nutshell, and I hope that helps. And I will see you guys in class.